And we're now going to go to the dedicated drill. This is the last drill.
Another hole.
That.
That's great. You got it.
So you can see how we're hugging the power of the wall. I don't know why this water is not stop. Suction there. Look at all that bone. Suction. David, please. That's all the bone from the socket. Take a look. Open wide just a little bit. Now close just a touch. No, don't move your head. Just when I say open and close, just open and close.
That's perfect.
That's the end of the drilling sequence. We're now just going to test the size of the implant into the hole. This is an analog. This gives us an idea of the location of the implant in the bone in the osteotomy. You can see that the angulation is going to be quite good for the replacement of this tooth. Okay, so we have a good location of this. Also, we've stayed away from the buckle, so we can place our bone graft in this area. You can see my probe now in the buckle, so we've avoided the buckle plate entirely, and we've maintained it. Once again, just 3 millimeters, we still have the buckle plate engaged, and we've really engaged the palatal wall. If we take a look, you can see again the angulation has been quite favorable for us. When we're thinking about the depth of the abutment that we're going to be using, this would be a 4-5. You can see what we're going to be testing is to see what abutment we want to use for the temporal restoration. This gives us an idea of the depth and the positioning of the abutment, the shape of the abutment for this system. And this gives us an idea of how deep to go and how that will affect the soft tissue contours. So just as an idea, this gives you location, angulation. We can also do something that's become very, very of a hot concept right now in implant dentistry, which is the whole concept of platform switching. This is a 3.8 platform that can fit on a 4.5. And we can go with a smaller abutment even though we have a wider diameter implant, which will give us more room at the neck. So there are a lot of different things that come into play in terms of the prosthetics and in maintaining the bone volume and the interproximal height, which gives us the aesthetics. So certainly something to think about. We can go with a 3.8 even though a 4.5 has been in place, and it's a smaller tooth. 3.8 may be in fact the best option for us restoratively. We're going to use this bone and we're going to graft the internal aspect of the buccal wall. We have a dry gauze if you can. Thank you. And if you can keep some of these instruments in my hand, I'd love it. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and put this on the buccal aspect. All right, you can see inside, we're pushing the bone to the buccal wall, making sure we engage all of that bone that we just harvested onto the buccal wall. And now, and only now, do we go to the placement of the implant. A 13 millimeter by 4.5 diameter. Okay. Go ahead, some saline. Go ahead, Kim. Go to the next one. We're going to go 30 Newton centimeters. Now to 40.
There you go. Hold tight.
And 40. And the implant's been inserted. You can see the angulation. Certainly within the parameters that restorative dentists will need. And you can see the angulation heading towards the lingual wall. Very good, very stable implant. You can listen to the sounds. You can see it does not sound like a tooth. A little bit of a hollow sound there, so we have good initial stability. If I can have that opened up and given to me. I want a little bit of water now, and what we're going to show you is the potential for the restorative aspect. I have to drop that margin a little bit on the... So we're going to drop it a little bit deeper for Dr. Garber. From a prosthetic standpoint, we're going to go a little bit deeper. No, I'm going to do it here. Yeah. You want any deeper than that in the buckle? It's right at the margin. A little bit deeper.
Going. Especially if we're going to do a platform shift. To give it a bit of stability.
Okay.
That's 3 now, just over 3.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just over 3. That looks beautiful.
This helps get our margin, so we're going to be right there in impression coping. And this is exactly where we want to be with the temporary. You can use your jig to pick it up. You're all done.
Can we do right now?
Okay.
Take a final impression also.
There it is. That is an impression coping or a temporary cylinder. We can use it for both. Implant stable, the bone graft's been done, implant's been inserted. We can now use this either take an impression, immediately send it to the laboratory, or we can use this as a temporary coping to be picked up in acrylic for a temporary restoration. But the angulation is now suitable, and we can pick this up, or as you can see how Dr. Garber engages this as a temporary restoration, so the patient can leave today with a temporary.
What we need to do now is transfer the location of this implant to the pre-existing study model. And the way we do this is, in this particular case, we're going to utilize an incisal jig made out of GC pattern resin. Alternatively, you could use a vinyl polysiloxane impression pickup, but this way we keep everything away from the surgical site. So it goes over the incisal aspect, around the impression coping, and all we do is we lute the impression coping to this incisal jig. Once this is set, and we do this obviously incrementally to minimize distortion, we're going to take it off the teeth, put it back on the stone model, and drill a hole in the base of the stone model and place an analog on the end of this, positioning it in the hole in exactly the same location as exists in the mouth, and then just fill this in with a little stone or some Duralay. And at that stage, we now have a model that we can work from, and we can now make the temporary in the laboratory, as you will see, or we can actually do it in the mouth. So we leave ourselves with options. If we do it in the mouth, we can utilize that stone model and go to final restoration in many situations, because, as Maurice has told you, we seem to have remarkable stability to that tissue, utilizing the process Henry was describing, keeping away from the buccal plane. Now what you're looking at is the jig we had made, the incisal jig, just to rapidly transfer this relationship. And we made it on the original model of her mouth before the tooth was extracted. And you'll see now indexes quite effectively. Drop your chin slightly. There you go. Onto these two teeth. And now I can use this to pick up the location of this implant in the mouth. And I'm just going to use a little Duralay to do that fairly effectively. You can see we're using the temp-based cap. And now we'll just flow a little Duralay onto this. So just using a little Duralay, well, this is GC pattern resin. We're just going to flow it around this temp-based cap onto the jig. And as that sets, it'll locate the jig in the optimal position relative to the incisal edges of the adjacent teeth, and then we'll use that to index it back onto the original model, rapidly making a cast that we can utilize to develop the temporary. Just do a little more. Open wide. Section on the area because I can't see. And we do this incrementally so that we allow the first part of the pattern resin to set completely before we add the additional increments, so we're going to get distortion as this goes through the setting process. And so once that part is hard and we evaluate it, then I can add the second part. And then we let that set completely. The acrylic is now set, and we can remove the temp-based cap in this incisal jig. And we can use this now to transfer that location in the lab.